Okay, so we're back. It's lesson 10. I've pushed everything up to GitHub, so hopefully everyone is caught up. So we want to add a little more logic to our navbar. So we're going to go to our header. We added our logout link. So I'm going to add another link beside it, but then we're going to kind of wrap these sections in an if-else. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, so before our logout link, first of all, I'll add another class, li class equals nav item, and another class equals nav link. This link isn't actually going to go anywhere. It's be a dead link. But in here, we want to print out, oops. We want to show when someone's logged in, we want to show their username. So when I'm logged in, my username is going to print. So here's that link, and I'm going to put it before my logout link. So now when I go to my grocery list, okay. So how come I got this? Well, actually, let's try it here. Sorry, let me do this. Let me log in. I'll log back in first. I'm getting this error. So I am logged in, right? On this page, it can read the session variable, right? Because it shows me all the links. How come I'm getting this undefined variable? How come this isn't working? Notice this error that shows up. Right, because I tried to read a session variable before calling session start. So this is what'll happen. So let's do this. I'm going to indent this. We want to set up our if-else statement. So up here, before the register link even, I'm going to open a set of PHP tags, and I'm going to call session start. So this should, I'm not muted. Anybody else besides Adil? You can hear me? Okay. Yeah, Adil, maybe just pop out and pop back in. Okay, that's good. So if I add this, if I add session start, let's go back and try again. Okay, so that's solved. This is the nature of programming. Solved one problem, created another one, right? My username now shows up, except we now get this. Session's already been started because on items.php, we have our check here where we're calling, guess what? Session start. So we can, if we're going to call session start in the header, we can actually remove it from here. So I'll just maybe take that out. Because we said you can only call it once per page. So I'm going to actually remove it here because our header's called first. So session start will get invoked up here. So this should make this error go away. Okay. So when I'm logged in, my username shows up, but now we need this if statement. We don't want to show all 4 of these links. We want to show either these or these. We also want them to appear, they should appear over on the right side of our nav bar. So we'll do both of those things. First, we'll say if empty on the items page, I removed session start here. So we had session start being called on line 6 of items. I've taken it out because we can't call it twice. It's being called in the header instead. That make sense, Ivan? Yep. So if our username is empty, we're going to do that. And if it's not empty, whoops, I guess I need PHP tags. Here's where our syntax gets kind of ugly. And then else. And I actually have to close my curly brace. I know it's hard to see all of it. I'll put it up on paste, but in a minute, I'm just going to check it out. So this if-else statement, this should now make it so that all 4 of these links will never appear together. We're either going to see register and log in, or we'll see our email address and log out. There's still going to be line to the left, which we'll fix in a minute. So now I get these in Chrome. I don't even see them, right? I see register and log in. The last thing I want to do is move these links over here. So here's how I'll do that. I'm going to create a separate UL tag. So instead of 1 list, I'm going to have 2. So I'm going to end that UL. And we'll start a second one, which is navbar nav. Think if I use ML auto. We'll try that class. May not be quite right for Bootstrap 5. So now this UL is down here. So I've put this after our first link. This may not be the right class I need. I may need to use another one, but I'll give it a shot. Okay, not the right class. Let's see. We'll try this one. Okay. We'll see if that class does it. Large auto. Yeah, it's better. It's not quite where we want it. May have to be good enough. Maybe I'll try this. Medium auto. No. Okay, I'll leave it here for now. MD auto. I'll fix it up. It's not quite where I want it. I may have to just check my class definitions. A bit later, but at least it's off to the right somewhat. Here's the full header now. So when I'm logged in, it shows me my email and log out. When I'm anonymous, it shows me register and log in. And this will change. So if I log out, again, my links toggle, log back in, links toggle again. And I can move around. So again, we've broken something. Because notice on our item details, we're calling session start, but we've already called it in the header. So on item details, again, we want to remove that call to session start. Because by calling it here to do our navbar, we've now broken things. So I'm going to go to item details. So let's see, where are we calling session start? Session start is actually being called in our auth page. So we've got two calls to session start. We've got one in the header and we've got one in auth. So I'm going to comment this one out. This is now called in header.php. So this should fix the problem here, and then we'll have to deal with it on delete and save as well. So now I'll go to my grocery list. My logic's wrong. Let's think about this for a second. That's a good question, Chris. I don't know. Not that I'm aware of. So let's just look. I think here's the issue. We're calling auth first. That's why it fails. So, we need to include the header before we include auth. That's the issue. So it is an order of operations. So I'm going to, on item details, at the bottom of all the PHP code at the top of the page, we're setting the title and including the header. I want to move this to the top of the file. So I'm going to cut it out of here. Header must go first as it calls session start, which auth needs. So this should fix the issue. Page title and header is first, then our authentication check. Right, so that'll fix it. Our save and our delete pages, though, those don't have headers because they're invisible pages. I don't think our header's even included. So I'm going to look at the save. Right, so our save page doesn't have our header, but it should, because if we get validation errors, we're printing them out. So I'm going to add this. We'll set a title and include the header. Chris, that is a good question. And if you feel like checking and finding an answer, that's great. If not, I will try to remember to check on that. And I'm going to do the same thing on my delete. Again, before our authentication check, on delete, same thing. I'll get rid of the header here and let's just use so these pages are still secured, but now session start always gets called inside our header file. Okay, that's interesting, Chris. So we could try that. I guess we could wrap this in an if statement. We'd have to look at what the status would be. So it would be something like if session status equals okay. So if it's none, then we could call session start. Okay, thanks for that, Chris. That's a great suggestion. I've never used that before. So yes, if we want a page that doesn't use the header, okay, we could try that. That will probably work. Thanks for finding that. So this would allow us to use our auth without calling the header first, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it seems to. Doesn't break anything. Okay, thanks for that, Chris. So one more little change I want to make here on our register page. Right now, when we go to save, create a new user, one thing we're not doing is we're not checking in the front end that the passwords are the same. So if I do this and this, when I go to register, our save registration page will show an error saying the passwords aren't the same, but there's no front end checking, which we probably should have. So we can use a little bit of client-side JavaScript to compare these two values. So if you want a bit of a challenge, I mean, I'm going to walk through creating a JavaScript method that gets called when the user clicks this button or types anything in the confirm box. If you want, you can want a challenge, which I know some of you mentioned in midterm survey. You could try and do this on your own. So you can ignore me and try and write your own script. but I'll go ahead and go through it so that if we get two different passwords, we're going to print a message right on the screen. So I'm going to go to our custom JavaScript file here that we created. So under JS, you can close all the files up except register. This is the last page we're going to work with today. So in our script, would help if I could spell. So we'll create a function called compare passwords. And when the user is in the register form, we want to call this function before we try to sign them up and post them to the server. So we can use getElementById. You guys have probably used this in your JavaScript class. Who's doing your client-side JavaScript? Is it Scott this semester? Yeah, okay, awesome. So I'm sure you've worked with getElementById to interact with an element in the DOM. So we'll call it a couple times. So we're going to get the two passwords entered and store them each in a variable. And then we'll set up a password message. We're going to add a little element to our form where we can display a message saying passwords don't match. So I guess we'll use getElementById one more time. So we'll create a span tag. It'll be invisible. Sorry, my neighbor's selling his house. He's doing all kinds of construction. If anybody wants a house with a pool and me as a neighbor, I'll let you know what he lists it for. So now we want to see if password 1 and password 2 are the same or not. So if password 1 is not the same as password 2, we want to print a message into this element which we're going to add to our register form. So we're going to set the inner text to passwords do not match. And we're going to change the class we're going to use Bootstrap so that that little warning shows in red. And lastly, we're going to say return false so that our form submission gets canceled. We don't want the user to be able to submit the form if we have a password message that says passwords don't match showing in red. Otherwise, we'll make our little span say nothing. And if the passwords are equal, we'll return true. I'll put this up on Pastebin. Relatively easy. I would imagine by week 10 of doing JavaScript with Scott, you could probably write this function by yourselves. And I imagine some of you have probably gone ahead and done that, which is great. So it's a simple comparison of the two input values. And when they're not the same, we're going to set the text and CSS class of a third element on the form. I'll put this up on Pastebin so you can grab it. But again, the more you try to code this yourself, the better you're going to get. And the more you're going to understand what it is we're doing. So we need to do two things on our register form in order to use this function. What two things do we need to do? Right now, this function, it exists, but it's not actually going to get used. I could add two different passwords right now. The register form doesn't care. So how do we enable this? Yep, we're going to need to call the function, Ivan. And one other thing we're going to need to do. That's actually going to be included already because our register includes our header, and our header already includes our scripts library. So normally we would have to, but in this case, that link is already there. So if we try to execute this function right now, it's going to cause an error. How come? There's one other thing we'll need to do in order to make this work. Thank you, Megan. We'll need to add an element with the ID of PWMSG, because we're going to get an error saying this is undefined. It's going to die here. That this is undefined, we call getElementById if the DOM doesn't have this. So first thing is maybe right beside our confirm box, let's add a span with the ID of PWMSG. So this is where we want that passwords don't match message to appear in red beside the confirm box. So it'll get rendered here inside of this field set. And then we're going to call this function on the key up event of the confirm. So as the user is typing in the confirm box, every time they finish pressing a key, we're going to call the function. So the user is going to continually see passwords do not match until they do match. And once they do match, this error is going to get wiped out. So you could call it on the click event of the button, but I'm going to call it on key up. We'll do return, because again, this is going to return true or false. Compare passwords. So this I'm putting on the confirm, our third text box. Let's try it out, see how it works. So I'll go back to register. I'll do, I don't know, test@test.com. And I'll put in, let's see, I'll use the same password, TEST1234. And when I do no, that's not working. Why? Okay, we've got a little problem. Let's see, what did I miss? I'll use my developer tools here. And I can check the console. Compare passwords is not defined. Let's figure out why that is. Probably because I didn't refresh the page, which would be silly. So is it here if I go to scripts.js? Okay, so in Chrome, it's being cached. And it doesn't see where's my function here? Let's log out. Go to register. Okay, yeah, Chrome was caching my JavaScript. So I'll try this in Firefox, or I could use an incognito window. That would work. I don't mind WebEx, but the WebEx toolbar makes me insane. Thank you. Go away. Okay. Let's try again, shall we? Test at test.com. So I'll do test 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's still not working. This should be showing our message here. What's going on? So we've still got a little problem. It's almost right, but not totally. We'll open my browser console. Let's clear this and refresh. Nothing here. Yep, it is linked because when I view the source, right, here it is. And if I click on it, it's here. It's got my function. So I'm a bit puzzled. What is going on? So our JavaScript is linked. Okay, to debug it, let me try this. I'm going to do this. I'll log out to the console just to see if this function's actually getting even invoked. Password confirm and PW message. And here are our IDs. Password, confirm, and PW message. Okay, good to know. That's okay. Go to the web console. Okay, thank you. Saying PW message is undefined. Again, it's a caching problem. No, it's not. Why is PW message? That's a strange message. It's in my form. It's not the browser console, it's the web console. PW message. PWMSG. PW. Oh, this is why, silly. Because it doesn't have a value property. These two are inputs, so they have a value property. That's what's undefined. My JavaScript debugging skills suck. We just are referencing the whole span tag so we can set the inner text and class name. Right. So now as I type, my red message is going to show up until the passwords match. And now it's logging them out, which I should get rid of. So as soon as I put in an extra character, it comes back once they match. So now I can register. Okay, that's fine. Our duplicate check is working. So I can take out this console log. So there's our function. So I had dot value here. That's got to come out. So make sure on this line, we take out the dot value attribute. For password 1 and 2, we're not referring to the whole control. We're referring to the value inside the control. But for this element, there is no value inside of it. So we're referencing just the object in the DOM instead. And there's other scripts you can use. You could find online if you wanted to do something like, showing the user, like rating the password for strength or weakness. We just added the pattern. So, if I do this, it'll tell me invalid format. Because we use this patterning, this regular expression that requires a digit, a lowercase, an uppercase, and a minimum of 8 characters. That's probably good enough as far as for our purposes. So thanks for those tips, Megan and Owen. Okay, I'm going to push this code up to GitHub. There's a couple of other things we're not going to really code, but a couple of other concepts that it's important that we look at before we go for today. Really important. Things you absolutely need to know if you're ever going to be building web applications, which is what many of you are going to wind up doing, both on co-op and as graduates. Ivan, I certainly hope so. I believe I am, yes. But thank you for checking. Okay, so everything we've done today is on GitHub now. So the first thing I want to talk about that you guys need to know about is SSL. Who knows what SSL even is, for starters? Anybody in the class familiar with it at all? Good guess, Ivan. No, it's not a language, but a reasonable guess. if you're going to do web development, you absolutely need SSL. Well, this is going to be fun. Okay, somebody use your search engine skills and tell us, what is SSL? How's it related to web development and security? Thank you. It is secure sockets layer. What does that mean? What does it do? Yes, Shaziel, it is a kind of certification. You can actually see it. Right, its point is to keep internet connection secure. So how does this work? Well, let's go to a website like this one. Okay. Or even the site we're on in D2L. This site is marked as a secure site. How can you tell? If you look at my screen, what indication is there that this site is security? Right. So there's two things. There's a lock. And what else is there near the lock that indicates it's a secure site? Thank you, Chris. The S means secure. It's HTTP. So what does SSL do? SSL, normally HTTP, all the traffic sent back and forth over HTTP between a browser and a web server, it's all sent in plain text. So that means if you log into your bank and you enter your username and password without SSL, when you submit your log from the login form, your username and password would be sent over the internet in plain text. When you then request to see your list of accounts, the bank's going to pull up those account numbers and all of your transactions, and it's going to send those back to your browser, your mobile device, also in plain text. So what SSL does is it encrypts that traffic between a browser and a particular domain. So nowadays, SSL is used on every website. It's absolutely required. So we should be seeing every site we build should have SSL. So we can actually see the certificate. If we click the lock, it tells us the connection is secure. It says who has verified. You have to purchase a certificate, and we can actually view it. So this certificate was Amazon is a valid certificate authority. This SSL expires in May. And it shows the encryption algorithm, and it says the page where it was encrypted before being transmitted. And we can even view the certificate, which shows you like the fingerprint, the encryption algorithm, etc. So we see that this is valid. And any decent website, not only does it use SSL, but if I try and load it without SSL, if I take the HTTPS out, there's a check, there's a script that runs either on the server or on every page, checking that every request is made with SSL. D2L will do the same thing. If I take the S out, it's just going to redirect me back to the secure version. So not only is there SSL on here, but there's a script or something that's checking any request to make sure the certificate is enforced. Here's what happens, and the certificates are registered to a particular domain. Here's what happens when you don't have an SSL certificate. So some of our students are going to be in this contest, and we sent them the register link yesterday, and one of them very wisely emailed me back and said, I don't want to fill out the registration form because there's no SSL here. So they bought the SSL for www, but they didn't bother to buy one here. And if you try to go here and load it securely, this is what happens. So what's the issue here? This domain is self-signed. So their certificate wasn't generated by a verified certificate authority like the www version was. So here they've got a valid certificate. We can check it out. We can see they got it from Let's Encrypt. And there's a valid certificate. But only on this part of their website. On their subdomain, the certificate is invalid. So a student said, I don't want to sign up here. Most users, what are they going to do when they see a message like this? Does this give you confidence as a user? When the browser tells you the website you're visiting is not secure? Right, you're going to go back and not load the site. Okay, and it also shows as not secure in your browser. And SSL also now, there's an article here, it also now affects search engine rankings. So sites that don't have, and I've just included the link here, and this explains how it works. So sites that don't have any SSL certificate, it's going to affect their search engine rankings. Google's been doing this as far back as 2014. So even if your site is just like static HTML, CSS, there's nothing sensitive or secure on it, you still need an SSL certificate. So when you're building a site, this is going to be up to you. This is part of your responsibility. And there's a couple ways to get SSL, and I'm just going to show you this briefly. So places like this, they've used a free service that's now widely available called Let's Encrypt. So many hosts will offer free Let's Encrypt certificates. So this is the cheapest and easiest way. So for example, here's one of the hosting companies I use. And for any client domain, any domain at all, like, so here's my own. If I want a free SSL, I just click enable in their hosting control panel, and they automatically buy and register a free SSL certificate, which is great. Some hosts support this. Other hosts don't offer this. If you go to guys like these, who you've all seen the ads on TV, if you host with GoDaddy, they don't offer Let's Encrypt. They want to sell you their own certificates that start at $85 a year. Now there's different levels of security as well, so you can see the pricing. The place that I go to get inexpensive ones is here, and I've linked this on D2L. So if you need, you're hosting a website, it's on a host that doesn't support Let's Encrypt. Namecheap has SSL that start at $9 a year. Now, less warranty, so you can see they offer a lot of different levels. So I've put the link up. And if you buy one of these, it's less expensive, but it's up to you to work with the hosting company to set up the certificate and install. And if you ever want help with that, you can let me know and I will help you. There's also an article here about how on PHP sites, I won't go over the mechanics, but some different ways to make sure we redirect any plain HTTP requests to use HTTPS. So we can do it in script. So we can check the server. If HTTPS is off, we can redirect to the same page, but using HTTPS. You can also do it through the htaccess file, like we did for error handling. You can check and say if HTTPS is off, redirect. So these instructions, I've linked to them here on D2L for you. So if you are building any kind of website, you need SSL nowadays in 2021. Okay. If you're ever working on this and you need more details on how to do it, then by all means reach out and I'm happy to help you. one other item related to authentication I just want to touch on really briefly. I won't take too long, but one of our former students who's now internet security professional, he's a graduate of the program. He actually taught in the program for a little while, although he's too busy running his web security, his IT security business right now. But he said, you really should show students OWASP. You guys should know what it is. So OWASP is a foundation, open source, where every few years they publish a list of the top 10 web application security risks. And they show how your sites are vulnerable and a series of best practices to protect against these things. So number one, for example, SQL injection. We've actually talked about this in our course. So you can read about exactly how it happens and some of the things you can use. So for example, using parameters in your SQL, for example. And they describe what this looks like. So here's a SQL query that would be vulnerable to SQL injection, and here's ways you can prevent it. So you don't have to memorize these, but it's kind of like a good checklist. Broken authentication, so problems with authentication and session management, for example. Not properly protecting sensitive data, cross-site scripting, etc. Insufficient logging and monitoring. So if you're building web applications, this is something you should probably become more familiar with. Also common in interviews. Ask you if you even know what OWASP is if you're interviewing for a junior developer position. So I've linked to this here in lesson 10. But if you're interested in security, and there's tons of work, obviously, in web application security, this is a good place to get started and a good resource. This isn't a security program or a security course, but it does inform some of the things we do. You can't graduate out of this program and know nothing about application security because it's part of our responsibility. We don't just have to build programs that work, we have to build programs that are secure. So I'm not testing you on these things on SSL and OWASP, but they're important concepts that I wanted to make you aware of. So the links are here for you in lesson 10. Okay, we're done. Sun is out. I will MS Auto. Thanks, Megan. That's excellent. I will change that in mine. I appreciate that. Okay, so no quiz this week. Just want you to work on assignment 2, part 1. I have office hours Thursday morning. So if you need help, you can book an appointment or you can shoot me an email, send me a link to your repository and maybe a description of your problem. And if I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume things are going well, and I'll see you next Tuesday. We'll start looking at file uploads, which you will need for part 2 of the assignment. Okay, have a great week, everyone. Thanks for all your contributions and attendance today. See you next Tuesday. Have a great week, too.